next panel is going to be led by Beth Blauer. Beth is near and dear to my heart. She was one of the first people who I spoke with when I interviewed at Socrata a little over 3 years ago. She's a well-known proponent of open government, transparency, and utilization. Currently, she is the executive director at Johns Hopkins University's Center for Government Excellence, and she will be first speaking a little bit about a Bloomberg Philanthropies initiative targeted at mid-sized cities to help them better use data and evidence. She will then invite a panel of people from the What Works Cities program to share a little bit about their experience. So please welcome to the stage Beth Blauer.
Is there a clicker? I feel like I should tell everyone to come closer. Everyone seems so spread out. Is there a clicker around here, Marcus? This is, clicker. All right. I feel very much at home here at the Socrata conference. Some of, I think, most important work that I did happened as a team member there, so I'm super happy to be back this year in a slightly less important role, but certainly not any shortage of fun. So thanks for being here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about What Works Cities. So at the end of last summer, I was working at Socrata, and I was approached by the people at Bloomberg Philanthropies who were thinking about creating a program designed for cities, and they were just doing some informational interviews where they started to ask about what were some of the biggest challenges that mid-sized mayors were facing across the United States. And as they were having these conversations, one sort of theme started to emerge very much over and over again, which was the mayors of mid-sized cities knew that there was data and evidence that was being produced in their programs and throughout the work that they were doing, but they didn't have any clear lines of visibility on how to use that data and evidence in their own decision making, when they were thinking about setting priorities, when they were writing talking points, when they were doing things. There just was an inability to really extract great value from work that they knew already was happening in their cities. And so the people at Bloomberg Philanthropies decided to help mid-sized mayors in particular around building capacity to do more work with data and evidence. And as part of that, they asked me to move over from Socrata. I say that Kevin Merritt traded me to the Bloomberg people, but I got traded, and I joined a team, a brand new team at Johns Hopkins University, who is going to be responsible for helping usher in this new program through Bloomberg Philanthropies. And so we created an organization called GovX, the Center for Government Excellence at Johns Hopkins University. And over the next 3 years, we'll be going to between 100 and 150 mid-sized cities in the United States and doing discovery sessions with mayors to essentially create a national baseline on the ability for mayors to use data and evidence in their daily work. And as part of that, not only are we going out there and are we doing that baselining, but we're also working with those cities to determine whether or not an ecosystem of partners that we're building can come in and provide services to help close the gaps on the areas where we think that cities could use some additional help. At Hopkins, not only are we building out the capacity to do this discovery, we're working on two primary tasks. Over the next 3 years, I'll work with my team with 100 cities on building the capacity to do open data work or advancing open data programs. The second piece of what we'll do is we will also work with a comparable amount of cities, maybe slightly less, hopefully, on building or starting STAT programs or performance management programs in the city. So it's not just about freeing data and getting data opened, but also making government the first consumers of data so that inherently the value of data improves over time, and we have the ability to make a big impact on outcomes that are important to people who are living in cities. sitting beneath us at the university is an enormous wealth of researchers that are wanting to really do work in cities. And so we're conveniently housed in the Center for the 21st Century City at Hopkins, and that gives us access to a lot of the different schools and researchers. And instead of sort of the traditional university model, where we have researchers who have developed research and then try to get into cities to try to play out their research on the ground, we're actually creating a pipeline from the mayoral level of opportunities for research that we're farming out to researchers across Johns Hopkins University. So it will be a truly led research initiative. And as part of that, we will be working with these cities not only to improve their own acuity to do this work, but we're also creating a network of users. So we'll have 100 cities in this network. And the idea here is that we are working under the assumption that the best teacher for another city is another city. And so how do we make the right connections at the program level so that open data and performance can be the backdrop of some really high impact changes that create networks throughout cities, so that no city is doing something for the first time. No city is trying to solve the same problem without having a core peer group that they can share data and evidence. And that includes creating normalization environments at the metadata layer and even more significantly at the data layer, so that they can compare their progress with each other. And the way that we're doing that is by collecting subject matter experts and then lending them to the effort. So working with people like Andrew Nicklin and Carter Hughley, who have been here at the conference, and other folks on our team, we're going out and we're lending the subject matter expertise to cities, and we're helping cities make these connections. But doing that, also creating a big knowledge base so that any city who wants to do this work can tap into the network and understand how they can improve their program around the use of data and evidence. So we're not doing this alone. Like I said, we have a very generous first investor at Bloomberg Philanthropies, but it's part of the What Works Cities initiative. We have a team of partners. So while we're focused on the early stages of this work, we also are partnered with the Sunlight Foundation, who's going to be working with a large number of our open data cities, standing up open data policies that will be consistent across the cities that are engaged in the program. We're also working with the Harvard Kennedy School, with mayors who are a little bit more mature in their practice, and they want to start integrating some of the concepts of performance into the relationship that they have with vendors. So looking at the way that government buys goods and services and understanding whether or not they can, instead of buying a good and service, they can buy outcomes or actually buy the impact that they're seeking through the relationship that they're having in that spend. And then finally, we're partnered with the Behavioral Insights team, where they're working on creating nudge units in government. Has anyone heard of a nudge unit? It's basically, all right, so we've got a few people. Basically creating the ability for government to lead their own A/B testing and low-cost evaluations to really drive incredible impact in short periods of time by implementing evaluation throughout programmatic, throughout the programmatic cycle. Let's see. So we're just getting started. So far, we've been in 40 cities where we've done these discovery sessions, and we have 9 active cities where we have engagements through GovX. So these are the cities that we're working with. I'm going to bring some of our city folks out, and we're going to talk a little bit about the work that they're doing today. But you can see here that we have the 9 that are working on a blend of performance management and open data. And this is just a review of sort of the 3 things that we're doing. But in addition to discovery and open data and performance and this advanced analytics that we're also working on with cities, we're creating a curriculum. So Johns Hopkins University is going to be creating a certification that will be available to our partners in cities, so that if you've got some folks on your team that have skills at a certain level, but they want to increase their skills so that they can engage in more detailed analytics, or that they can get to the next level in open data, we're going to be creating a certification path for those folks, and it will also be available to students on campus. So at the same time, we want to have an impact on the culture of government, but we also want to be able to create a pipeline or deepen the bench in government. So the idea is that we're leveraging our relationship with the university to be able to provide those resources into the participating cities. Instead of, I think, going through these, which I gave you an overview of sort of the program, I'd love to just bring people out and talk a little bit about what this looks like on the ground. So if I could just have my city partners come on out.
Hi, everybody. How you doing?
I'll have everybody.
Do we have enough seats for everybody?
Yeah.
Yep. I think we're good.
So I'm going to have, I think, if you don't mind, I'm going to have everyone just introduce themselves, talk about the what city you're from, and then also what are the areas where we're partnering.
Sure. So my name is Eric Roche. I'm the Chief Data Officer with the city of Kansas City, Missouri. We're a city of about 450,000 people, and yes, we are in Missouri, not Kansas. We were never in Kansas. Kansas City Royals, Missouri. All right. So I work with the Office of Performance Management, which is this really cool kind of performance data skunkworks that we've set up within the city manager's office, which gives us a little bit of permanency within the city, and also the ability to really work with departments on a regular basis. So over the last several years, we've developed really great relationships with all of our departments, and we have a very deep understanding of how they operate. We've also been using open data where we can to kind of dog food, and really that's where we get our performance data from. And it's a really nice system, and we get all our data from there. We run performance analytics on it. When we find mistakes, we can fix them on open data, and we're using really open data kind of as we were talking about earlier today in some of the sessions, is I think it was, I forget the term, but like the bottom of our pyramid, really. It's where we put everything, and it's great to tackle transparency and performance with the same data set, and it's worked very well for us so far. But part of what we've been struggling with is how do we expand from here? We have a centralized open data office. I'm only one person. I have one great staff member in IT. So we partnered with What Works Cities to really help us create some structure and what are the best practices around expanding our open data program. And we're moving into data governance at this point in time, led by the city manager's office, right? That's typically something that a lot of IT departments would look into. By having the city manager's office there, we can go into these departments and say, no, you are going to give us this data, you are going to carry out these tasks, this is something that we've put in ordinance now, we're going to go forward with it. So on the open data side of things, we're going to have a lot better understanding of what this data means. We're going to create people in every department who own this data, who are responsible for it, but are also responsible to their peers, right? So when one department is putting in for a grant application, and they need to know how many dangerous buildings the Neighborhoods and Housing Services Department has, they'll know exactly who to contact or exactly what data does and does not exist on the portal. So we're creating that community of users. And that's something that we hadn't really thought of until we partnered with What Works Cities. The other thing that we're looking at is our KC Stat performance management side of things. KC Stat is a public report out. It's modeled after the Baltimore Stat program. I won't go into a lot of detail about that one, other than it's a very high-level report out of how is the city doing to meet council goals and priorities in a data-based way, in an objectifiable way. We also have an internal PM system where we meet with divisions, departments, and the city managers there, and that's where we do things like talk about potholes on one intersection for 3 hours or dig really, really deep into that low-level performance data, and that's where you can start to apply best practices and business principles. And for a long time, we've kind of been a mile wide and an inch deep on that, and through What Works, we are really scoping in, and the department directors are working with us to figure out exactly what problems they feel that we can tackle with data. And we can do that because we have those relationships built, and our department directors are fairly data savvy because we've been working with them for years now. So we're really looking forward to what issues our department directors are going to come up with and tackling them and hoping to produce a lot of results. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Shigoda, and I work for the City of New Orleans in the Office of Performance and Accountability. We've been around for about 5 years now, and we do a large performance management report every quarter that covers about 50 departments. And we also do a variety of stat programs and have recently started an analytics program as well. We're working with What Works Cities in 2 different areas, one around open data, and the second area is around low-cost evaluation. In the open data space, we started a data governance committee this past spring. We're working really closely with our IT department on that. It's co-chaired by our director and the director of IT. And we've been doing open data for many years now. We've had an open data portal. But what we've really been trying to move towards is a more systematic, a way that makes more sense to do that, to make it sustainable in the long term and to make it as useful as possible for folks. So What Work Cities has been a huge help with that, with getting our first open data policy drafted. And we're very excited about that, and also tying that to our performance management work, in that we're trying to, right now we have about 350 indicators that we track quarterly, and for each of those indicators we're trying to open up the source data behind it so that it's truly transparent and people can see how we're coming up with the final counts that we're coming up with. And then there's a reason to keep publishing that data. So starting with what's already being used to make decisions and getting that out there in the fullest way that we can. And then in the area of low-cost evaluation, we're doing a couple different projects. One with code enforcement compliance letters, and trying to get owners to voluntarily comply and fix up their houses, which we're predicting will be a huge cost savings to the city. Another similar project is with sales tax delinquency, and trying to get people to voluntarily turn that money in with the least hassle as possible on our end. And then the third project is around police recruitment, and that's been a huge issue for New Orleans. So we're really excited about that work in both recruiting people to the site to apply to become police officers, but then also to stick with the process. We're working with behavioral insights to design a communication strategy so that those recruits are getting personalized text messages, reminding them to go to the test, encouraging them, to stick with it and remember why they're doing this, and hopefully make it all the way through the process.
Great.
My name is Tony Yarber. I'm mayor in the city of Jackson, Mississippi, and let me just give a disclaimer really quick. In Mississippi, we do wear shoes. And, well, we do, through the week. And we actually do more than chew tobacco and spit. But long story short, when I became mayor, after having served on the city council, I recognized quickly that a conversation about open data had to be held, because my background is in education. So I was a school principal where everything we did revolved around data, whether or not we were talking about children with special needs and performance, and whether or not we were tracking children and their performance and teachers' performance evaluations. And so when I became mayor, what I realized is that there was no open data for the mayor. And most of the folks wanted open data for the citizens, but I realized that there was no real way for me to actually capture the work that we were doing. And the struggle for mayors and the struggle for CEOs is to know that work is going on, but not be able to capture that work and to talk about the impacts of the work. And what I quickly came to realize is that in government, we're really, really good at nuance. While there's a major in almost every liberal arts university called political science, there's very little science applied in the work of everyday government. And so I wanted to be able to see how we could bring some focus back to the science aspect of the politics that we were doing every day. And so we started attempting about 9 or 10 months ago, trying to pull this together. We knew that each department was creating sets of data. Every department was probably creating hundreds of different sets of data, but which of those pieces of data were actually impactful to the kinds of work that we needed to see? Which of those pieces of data did we need to have real live conversations about as related to both our short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals? And what we recognized quickly was we did not have the capacity, whether that capacity was in human resources or whether it was in our technologies. And so what we did was we focused on what we could control. And so we look at this open data piece as a conversation about policy, processes, innovation, and technology. The technology conversation was one that we couldn't have because there was no real opportunity for us to seize the kinds of technology, the kinds of integral technology that would give us an opportunity to do the work that we needed to see done. The other piece of the conversation was not just about open data, but it was also about performance management. What I learned quickly was that after about 4 departmental meetings with our department heads, that everybody came in and wanted to tell a story about what was happening in their department. Well, we're doing this and we're doing that, and I'm thinking to myself, I rolled past that damn pothole yesterday, so surely you're not telling me today it's fixed. Right? But everybody wanted to talk about it, and it was really hard for me to actually see that being played out. And so I needed a way as mayor to be able to go to my handy dandy little cell phone and pull up a dashboard and be able to really dig down deep and see if that's actually what's going on. So the vision is to be able to move from having these narrative field department meetings, so we're having data sessions. So when our folks walk in, we're strictly talking about goal setting. Where are we in this progress monitoring piece? And how do we turn that information out so that the public can tell us, can see exactly the work that we're doing? Quickly, we're getting ready to launch, every year we do a vision casting. Last year, my first year in office, we did a vision casting. This year, we're ramping up for what we're calling Vision 2.0. Well, Vision 2.0 is going to be different this year because Vision 2.0 will be strategically tied to those indicators or sets that we're going to turn out to the public. And we're going to say, here are the things that you have said based on the surveys that you've completed that are important to you. Here's what we are going to commit to doing over the next 12 months, and here's where you can track our progress to be able to see if we're actually doing what we say that we're going to be doing. So What Works has come on, brought a wealth of support to my team of 3. And they have brought the kind of expertise that we could not afford through any kind of procurement process because it's priceless. And so they've come on, taught our folks how to methodically create the kinds of systems that we need in place. And then the next step, of course, is to bringing that technology on board to be able to match the work that we're doing in our policies, our procedures, and in the innovations that we're seeking to make in Jackson. That's all, I guess.
Just that.
All right. I should have set on that end. It's kind of hard to follow. I'm David Carmody. I'm the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for the City of Chattanooga. We're lucky enough to have a great mayor who came in knowing that he wanted to make open data and performance management part of what he did on a daily basis. So I think that that's really important. So this is kind of something that he started and is very important. And so this has all been driven out of the mayor's office. So I'm lucky enough to be a part of that. And we started out, knowing that people wanted to know about their government. And in order to have a great government, people had to know what you're doing. And so that's where the open data piece comes in. And then on the other side, we had to pursue excellence internally. And so that's where the performance management side came in. And so we kind of married those two, and we started about 1.5 years ago, and we made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot through that process. And through Socrata's help, we have an open data portal, a performance site, open budget, and in a short amount of time. But we kind of learned some lessons and some definite steps that we might have skipped. And so our engagement with What Works has kind of helped us kind of fill in those gaps. And so one of the things we've realized is that data for data's sake is kind of useless. And so we have to understand how to prioritize those data sets that we're releasing so that we're not wasting time or resources in order to do that. And so who is it meaningful to? So we want to start with our departments first through this engagement. I think that that's what we've realized is that's where the work happens, and we need to focus on doing great things internally, and that kind of rolls up and creates a great story to tell on our performance website to the public. The other part of it is what does a STAT program look like? Because all governments are different, and there's several different models, and so we've been kind of walking through that. Our first STAT model was really, all of the department administrators sitting around a table with the mayor and talking about the stuff that was on the performance management side. but that really just scratches the surface, and you can't really have a meaningful, in-depth conversation in that environment. And so what we've tried to do is figure out a way that works for us. You know, what does that model look like? And I think that some of the help that we've gotten through the What Works Cities engagement has kind of helped us kind of shape what that looks like. And really, it's kind of a two-part system where, you know, there's this internal accountability that's maybe on a small scale, and then there's a larger group where you meet with the mayor and you know that he's engaged and he wants to know about your program, and it gives it that priority. And so we've learned a lot, and we're happy to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. My name is Daro Mott. I am from California, but I still wear my shoes. I work in Kentucky, which is a great place. Invite you to the Derby. Now, I've had the pleasure and privilege of working in a city for a mayor and a wonderful chief of performance and technology who has helped take us on a continuous improvement journey starting in January of 2012. And that journey consists of what we refer to as the Louis Stat program, which actually has department stat led by chiefs, as well as Louis Stat, where we still bring the senior executive team with the top managers for each department to evaluate performance. We have sustainability stat that happens 3 times a year, as well as vacant and abandoned property stat. We are partnering with Beth Blauer and her partners and have at least 5 streams of work. One stream of work has to do with our data governance and our work in planning and design services so that we can actually get better access to the data and integrate our open data for that area with our performance management efforts in a way where we're putting out data sets which are consumed by those who are going to view it, right? It's a very interesting journey. We also have a potential project around procurement, which we're still gathering the internal I guess, buy-in and availability to take on procurement. It's a very big issue that we focused on in our traditional performance management efforts. We have 3 work streams right now with the behavioral insights team. And just like New Orleans, we're looking at compliance with our property maintenance code. It's just to get property owners to comply with the notice, the notices of violation, et cetera. We also are looking at lien collections. That's been a big area for us, and we've been able to actually get more compliance, but we still have many opportunities for improvement. And the last thing that we may partner with the Behavior Insights team on, we have a visit this week with Elspeth and her team, would be just tax collection. We think that if we change correspondence, we can get people who underreport to actually report what they actually owe. So that's a promising project, and we're delighted to use the expertise that Beth and her partners bring to the table.
Great. So I have some questions, but I also want to open it up if there are any questions out here, because would much rather have this be more of a dialogue. So if anybody has a question, I think that there are mics on either side, and you can just line up. If not, I will be happy, or you can just raise your hand too. I'll be happy to just ask my questions. Anyone have a question? Yep.
I have a question kind of for you, but
yep.
So all the stuff from the behavioral insights in terms around code enforcement and compliance is like would be huge for every city government. So how are you going to share those results and help other governments implement best practices that are being piloted in these cities?
Right, and so the idea here is that we are creating an open knowledge base so that all of the practices that the cities are investing in, we're going to be writing up and sharing. So you can go to What Works Cities, the website, whatworkscities.org, right? Is that right? Yeah, okay. Matt, I'm good. Okay. Also, GovX, we'll also be amplifying some of that. And then there's going to be sort of an open knowledge base. And then there are also going to be these peer-to-peer opportunities. So learning, whether that's in webcasts that will be hosted by people from the cities talking about the processes that they went through to get the work done. We are hosting regular office hours for some of our subject matter experts also, where we're going to be engaged with people who want to learn more about what's happening in the What Works cities. But also, it's meant to be very organic. So if we see that there's a city that's struggling with a particular issue, then that's something that we'd like to apply resources to, and we expect that other cities are also facing some some of those same barriers to success. And so we're creating really kind of this sort of bottoms-up approach to the resources that are put out there. So we have already created a number of different Git books on our GovX website, where you can take a look at some of the approaches that we're taking and some of the practices that we're putting into place. And then we're asking for community contributions into our thought process and whether or not there should be other types of materials that would be helpful. And it's not just for those cities that are participating. It's for any city who's interested in moving, in forward momentum in the movement. And so the idea here is that I think, you know, the technology to a certain extent is the easy piece. It really is the program and the practices and making sure that there's some consistency across the way that this work happens that will really be sort of the end point benefit to the cities who are participating and doing the work. So. Any other question? I have a question for Mary Yarber about sort of, so it's an interesting mix of people on the stage. We've got most of our cities that are represented here, you've either heard about their programs before, they're pretty advanced cities in their work, but Jackson is definitely one of our cities that has sort of taken off and is in the pole position to a certain extent. I'd love to hear like kind of what you think about the opportunity around the peer network with other mayors and also for your program teams, and then what are the things that you would love to learn from the cities who have a lot more experience doing the work, because you guys have really just taken on a lot, and so just, you know.
Sure. So one of my favorite sayings is that experience is not always the best teacher. And for mayors, we're always in a race to be second. And typically that means that we really want to take advantage of any opportunity there is not to replicate something that could be detrimental to what we're attempting to do. So the opportunity to network for Jackson is monumental, because we are just turning the corner on this conversation about what open data looks like for our city. We understand the performance management conversation, but what we don't understand is some of the political landmines that are out there when you're talking about open data. What we face, and I definitely want to hear from our counterparts in Chattanooga and Kentucky and New Orleans. We really want to know how is it that there are determinations on what data is, and I use this, and I don't want y'all to misunderstand me, what data is safe to have published. You want to be open, you want to communicate appropriately, but you also don't want to be burned at the stake for it at the same time. And so that's going to be key. It's going to be pivotal. One of the things that I did not do as it relates to any of the folks on the stage, but we did do to some cities similar. We recently had a death of a detainee in our holding cell. Well, immediately, you have to get that information out, because if the information gets out and you don't get the information out, then what does everyone think? We have something to hide. And if we get the information out and then we haven't gotten the right information out in the right way, we haven't communicated that, we haven't used that data to create the right narrative, then it creates a problem. So being able to just sit and talk about how do you do those things is monumental for us. And then finally, Justin, if you would raise your hand out there, Justin he would be sitting up here with this group of gurus rather than me. But Justin, in my opinion, is phenomenal, but he's even more phenomenal with the men and women that are sitting on this panel to be able to maximize his potential.
Any other questions, or can I keep going? No. Yep.
And I've actually visited Jackson, Jackson, anyway. I actually worked though for Providence, and when I graduated from college, I worked for JP Morgan a long time ago. JP Morgan was a very elite organization, and they actually trained us, Cornell, and the professor there. I would work for JP
Well, I'll just simply say this. Later today, I'll talk a little bit more, but one of the 5 themes that we've adopted is innovation. And so when you are Mississippi, you're Jackson, Mississippi, and you're leading in last, you get a pass on being innovative. You literally get a pass. You get an opportunity to go into the woodshed, create something, come out. If it works, everybody loves you and nobody's attempting to keep you in a box.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think Louisiana and Mississippi are always in competition for 49 and 50th a lot of times. But I think, too, another great thing that comes out of it is you get, at least for the city of New Orleans, a lot of really bright people that are really open to taking on a challenge, kind of converging in one place. People that are willing to take those risks and be more innovative, and we have a great mayor right now that really supports that kind of work. So it's really been an exciting time to be working there.
And I think it is also helpful to know that when the idea for What Works Cities came about, there was a real deliberation around what cities would be eligible to participate. But there was sort of unanimous agreement that we were going to make it mid-sized cities, so cities with populations under 1 million. And a lot of that was generated from these conversations with mayors, where we would go to mayors that were in cities like Jackson and Kansas City, and we would try to bring in examples from Chicago and New York and LA. And their first thing that they would say is, I'm not Chicago, I'm not New York, I'm not LA, I don't have the resources of those cities, I don't have the teams that those cities can draw, and so I need to figure out what kind of, I want to do this work, but I need to figure out how the model looks in a city like mine. And so the idea here is that this program is focused on mid-sized cities. These are scalable resources. They are meant to be very lightweight. We're not trying to create more work for an already overburdened bureaucracy, which all of these cities are. But the idea here is, how do we pour in additional resources so that we can take advantage of the opportunities that do exist? And I encourage you to go back to Jackson, because it is, one of the most magical experiences I've had in recent times was our site visit there. So I think that, this whole idea is that this is the opportunity, and that these are the cities where you can have immediate impact, and you can really, and that impact can be felt on the ground very quickly with this type of work. So, any other, there's a question back there. Cam, is that you? Cam Caldwell?
I just have to yell. Yell? Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is, for all the cities that are on stage, I know a lot of you are working with other data-driven innovation projects, that focus on cities in the public sector, like Code for America fellowships, Rockefeller's 100 Resilient Cities program, Google Fiber. So there's a small open data company based out of Seattle, Washington. How do you combine the efforts of existing technology, data-driven programs to make sure they're working together in the best interest of the city and not in individual silos?
That's a great question. I'll speak quickly. One, I think you need a strategy. That strategy should be clear, concise, and compelling to everyone involved. Two, you need a good plan to implement the portfolio of work which is actually happening to achieve the strategy, which can include Socrata. That's a big part of what we want to do to create near real-time dashboards. But we want to use, GovX to help us dive deeper into places which we actually haven't given the proper, attention to. But there are also, low-hanging fruit, which we can use for the behavioral insights team, and we have capacity to do so within the organization, but we have to balance the portfolio of work that is going to help us accomplish the strategy.
Yeah, and I think also from our perspective, a lot of these cities, or a lot of the cities that are in this population that we're serving, they would have been boxed out from a lot of those opportunities because they just didn't have the capacity to absorb participation in some of those programs. And so what we're trying to do is to give them some fundamental skill level so that they can raise their hand and say, I want to be part of 100 Resilient Cities. And I already have this infrastructure in place where we already have sort of these, we already have governance in place. We already have an approach, the way that we're able to move data through our city. And so we're not going deep on verticals and saying we're going to only focus on housing or public safety. But what we're saying is we want you to have a practice that's, you can pull any problem that you're facing or any challenge that you want to hit head on, and you can pull it through this infrastructure, and it's going to come out the other side better than where, you know, it entered. And so the idea here is, you know, we want, I think a lot of times some cities weren't able to even compete. And as we emerge into the new economy, this is a way for cities to be competitive that historically have been, you know, sort of left behind by some of the bigger investments that were made. So we're excited and want to partner with, you know, and are partnering with a lot of the initiatives that are cutting across this workload. I'm getting the high sign from Marcus, I think. One last question, or I really want to thank the panel for participating and being awesome, and also thanks to Socrata for having us. So thanks very much.